Hello and welcome to the Building Our World podcast. My name is Alex Bloisey and I'm the founder of tech recruiting venture Ventilect. In this podcast series, I'll be interviewing founders of tech companies inspired to push the boundaries of human innovation. We're really going to be delving deep into their journey, exploring how they turned complex ideas into reality, and ultimately find out how they built highly successful businesses. I really want this podcast to be a place for aspiring entrepreneurs to be moved to take action on their ideas, and also a place for the wider tech community to hear how their counterparts are achieving this success. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Building Our World podcast. Today we are live from Munich with Felix Eichler, who is the CTO and co-founder of a real Munich startup success story called Userlane. Now, Userlane's mission is to close the knowledge gap between humans and machines by allowing anybody to use any software application without training. They started back in 2015 when Felix was still at university, and in that time have grown to 60 employees, and remarkably, some of that growth has come in 2020. They've also just secured their Series B funding round and now have their sights set on international expansion. In this conversation, Felix discusses how him and the business dealt with the pandemic. He talks passionately about his employee-first working culture. And towards the end, he gives some incredibly valuable advice around starting up, securing funding, and gives his views on what is needed for business success. His words will be so valuable to anybody out there who's an aspiring entrepreneur or just wants to make an impact. I got so much from our conversation, and I really hope you do too. So let's get started. So let's cut right to it then. It's 2020. The world is on its knees. The tech world has made a massive regression this year. But if I go on Userlane's LinkedIn page or website, I definitely see a company that's grown, that's still hiring, and has just secured a new funding round as well. So I've given you a brief introduction, but it'd be great if you could tell everyone kind of what you do, what Userlane are doing, and where you're up to as a business right now.
Sure, happy to do so, Alex. So I'm Felix Eichler, one of the co-founders and the CTO of Userlane. With Userlane, we are on a mission to make the digital transformation fun again, as I would like to say. And this is all about guiding users through software that they have to now use on a daily basis without the hassle of reading manuals, without the hassle of watching some videos, and just getting right to it. We are just making people more productive and hopefully also thereby making the digital transformation more fun again.
How's things been this year in regards to the pandemic and demand and being a founder of a tech company throughout what has been a huge moment in history?
Yeah, in the beginning it was really scary because, of course, we all didn't know how bad this all would be. Luckily, since we're based in Munich and Germany, we have went through this crisis quite well, I must say. And so we just switched to home office internally on 15th of March. And actually, we had a new hire also on 15th of March. We wanted to onboard her and we did. And we onboarded now a number of people 3 months later, and some of them have actually never been to the office. And for us internally, it has been quite easy to just switch to a full remote working home office setup. We have, in the meantime, now reopened the office, but limited it to like only 10-20% load so that people can keep a bit of distance. However, we see that demand is really low. So there is at no day, there is more than 5 people in the office really on average. And that is actually quite surprising for us, so that I think everyone experienced now how it is to work from home. And some people would have totally underestimated it, how flexible it is and all the new freedoms that people enjoy. And even this week, for example, I'm at my girlfriend's house, and it's amazing because I can just work from here, and it's outside of the city, and I'm just can be in a different environment in my spare time around the working hours, and that's really cool because that's not an opportunity that I had before, and that's a new liberty, and I think people will now want to keep that. And I think every organization now needs to think about how they're going to shape this new age of remote working and how they enable their employees to collaborate effectively also in remote. And actually, this is also why we've noticed an increased demand for a digital adoption platform like Userlane, because many companies need to rethink their digital processes. And we are just one more way in order to accelerate the transition towards that.
So how does it work in terms of your product? Because I've seen tutorials. I've never used the product myself, but it just basically, is it for non-computer literate people, or is it for just helping companies?
I think it's for everyone, really. Even if you're a computer literate, you kind of get the hang of how software works quickly, but it's not really the software itself. It's often the business processes that need explaining. So, there is this consumerization of software. So, Spotify, you just press play. You have an Uber app, you just call a cab, and that's it. It's one button. But you can't do that in a CRM like Salesforce. You can't just make one huge sell button. That would be amazing, but that's not how it's going to work. And this is why things that employees have to do in software needs explanation, and that explanation is partly how the UI of the software looks like and where to click, but this is also how the business process works. And all of this in many companies is not really connected to each other. So you have a huge handbook, but that doesn't really connect to how the software looks like. And with Userlane, we focus on just providing the right information at just the right time. So it's pretty much think about how the process was 20 years ago when you were to become a cab driver. You needed to study the city map, and you needed to take an exam in order to, like, if a passenger enters and says they want to go to this and that street, then you needed to make up a route in your mind and present that. And this is not how it works today. Today, anyone can be a cab driver because there is a navigation system. And I think of Userlane as this technology for software. So anyone can now navigate any software, no matter if they've used it before or if they're very computer literate or just a little. We tell them by providing them the minimal information necessary, what they need to get to their destination. So anyone can now use a Salesforce like a pro. You'll have a better fill rate of these Salesforce fields. That I perceive it in our own sales team, and in many sales teams that I talk to, they say the same thing, that selling is one thing, but navigating Salesforce is the other. And we just want to connect that back together and make it easier for everyone to get around to what they want to do, actually.
You're completely right with the cab driver stuff in London. When Uber first came out, they were abusing the Uber drivers because they didn't have to study for a ridiculous amount of years to memorize all of the London streets.
Yeah, true. And this would have been possible, in the 90s. There was 3 different softwares that you use, probably just the classic Microsoft Office suite, and it was updated every 3 years. And you could just take a training for a week every time it came out. It was no problem at all, And nowadays, you don't use 3 apps, you use like 30 apps, and they don't get released every 3 years, but rather every 30 days. There is another update. It's like the cloud age. And this now makes it unfeasible to really go to a formal training and to really have the time set aside to just look at the software, find your way around. And I think just the expectation for productivity has been increased. And this actually creates, so some people are afraid now because of this, of digital transformation and of having to use yet another software. And, they have rolling eyes already when they hear about it. And I think that's a very sad perspective of the world, because honestly, I think that software is going to be all around us. Software is quite literally eating the world. And so we want that to be a positive thing, because I don't think that it makes sense to reverse that trend, but we want it to be positive. And this is where Userlane comes in, and where we focus really on the experience of the human in front of it. And we want technology to adapt to the humans and not the other way around. And even when I think about this a few years down the road, when there will be more AI all around us and more and just really intelligent things and software around us, I think this becomes ever more important, that humans are not left behind, but that humans remain to play a central role in the structure of society, in the sense that they are in charge, that they are in control, and the technology is really here to help us to make humans more productive, or to let them fulfill their wishes and everything, and not just humans basically as the flexible cogs in the big software system that just do what software and robots cannot yet do. That I think it would be a very sad future, and so I don't want that to happen.
And you've definitely seen a sort of a growth in demand as a result of everyone working from home then this year.
Yeah, we've seen a spike in demand, and that's very cool for us. Obviously, now it just comes at just the right time. So also we're incredibly thankful that we closed the funding round just in time for that, and that we can now help more and more companies to roll out software to their employees. So think about when everyone was switching to home office overnight. Essentially, this change has been discussed for years, how to drive digital transformation in big companies, and now it just happened. The talks of the last 3 years were executed now in 3 days. And this, of course, presents also huge challenges for some people. They have to now use new software, like Zoom is, for example, one of them. And there is many other tools that you suddenly have to use. And it's not as easy anymore to just turn around, ask your colleague how things are working. So you want to have like a navigation system for software there, something like a digital adoption platform like Userlane, that product that we offer there. And this helps people to get onboarded with new software, to find their way around new software, and to remain productive even if they don't have their immediate colleagues around them, or they can just answer them questions that they have by themselves.
It's amazing how much timing has an impact on businesses and demand. Obviously, I've just started my business, so I've been doing a lot of reading and research on just entrepreneurship and startups. And the timing of your idea in the world is such an important factor. A lot of people say it's more important than the founding team, even the idea and the business model, because YouTube came around when the bandwidth was just enough to stream videos online, Facebook as well. So it's amazing how when the timing's right and the environment's good, there's the wind in your sails.
Definitely, you need that timing and that team. I think I also agree with you that these are the two most important factors to it. And actually, there is just, I think, a hidden number in how many teams have actually tried to do a similar idea before that just are not known because it didn't work out. So I think the guys over at Airbnb, they weren't the first ones with that idea. But it was just that timing of the economic crisis in 2008 that more people were interested in that, and maybe some other factors, of course, of just operational excellence that make it a success. But also same thing with Facebook and YouTube. I think it has been attempted many times. And actually, one of the things that I find amazing is when I think about Netflix in that regard, because Netflix, like YouTube, just the concept wasn't really possible before internet speeds were fast enough, and they were just shipping DVDs across the country anyway before that, just to have a business operating already. And I think that's extremely powerful. That you just have to also adapt your concept, your business model, your idea to whatever the world around you just currently offers. And I think this is really inspiring.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people will measure entrepreneurs on if they've had sort of 2 or 3 successful ventures and then have exited.
I'm sure that helps, but actually one of our lead investors mentioned that he looked at some statistics that if you're a serial entrepreneur, I think after the second time or so, you're more likely to actually fail than to succeed again. Yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
is that because you've just been that you lack the hunger and you've got the money in the bank from your last exit?
I don't think so. I think it was more due to you think everything is possible. If you've built 2 businesses, then you kind of probably just feel like a god, and then just attempt underrate some risks that are actually there and overrate your own skills maybe. And that's I think how it could happen. But I'm not in that situation yet, so I can't really tell.
So you mentioned the founding team. So let's bring it back to the beginning. How did Userlane itself start out? Because are you around 60 employees now? I know you're growing.
Yeah, we are. I think right now in August we are around 60, maybe 62 now. And in the beginning of the year we've been around 45. At the end of 2020 we'll be around 80, and then it looks like next year in 2021 we're going to be more than 100. And we founded the company in 2015. where just the three of us, Kai Hartmut and me, were sitting together, and we were actually producing software and selling it to mid-sized clients, typical German Mittelstand. So we fabricated things like CRMs or like custom business software, whatever it was about, and then they asked us, okay, thanks guys for the cool software, and now how do we train our employees to use it? And they asked us, like, can you prepare like some PowerPoint slides, and can you come here and hold workshops for them in like groups of 30, and then they have like hundreds of employees, so it would have taken forever to do that, and it would have been a very tiring job. We didn't want to go there and just present some dull PowerPoint slides. And this is actually we thought like, hey, come on, we can be smarter than this. And then this was the spark that got us to discover the concept of interactive guidance. So just showing the users directly on the software where they have to click. And then we explored that, and we could build it into our own software that we were doing at the time. That was easy, but then we took it one level further, and we made it technologically compatible with any kind of browser-based software, since they all use the HTML standard that is possible. And this really unlocked a lot of potential, because then we first went to other software companies, often SaaS companies, who needed to onboard users and who needed to get them familiar with how things work, and especially also the new features. So this was our early use cases, I would say, for the first 2 years. And then we started to feel a pull from the enterprise segment. Means like huge corporations who introduce a new software to their employees, and they like an SAP or like a Salesforce. And then they also have these very extensive training programs, and people were traveling around the world just to attend, these trainings in software. And it's kind of ridiculous, because now in the agile way of developing, the software is changing very, very fast sometimes, and nothing is really stable. So this whole concept doesn't make sense. And they pulled us into there, and they asked us, like, can you not do the same concept what you're doing with Userlane also for Salesforce and SAP? And so we went there, and this is now our main focus as a business, to focus on this employee enablement and software adoption topic. We are now a digital adoption platform that does exactly this, that we are more focusing on these enterprise customers, trying to train and enable their employees rather than the software companies, typical SaaS companies, who need to onboard and retain their users. I mean, we're still doing that, and it's a nice mix of both worlds. And it just has been proven much, much more valuable in the enterprise segment.
So before you had that spark, I mean, how did you meet your other co-founder? How did that all work?
That was quite funny, because I think we met first on some kind of summer party in Munich. I guess in Munich there is this co-working space called Werk 1, and they have a nice summer party. And so we met there, and I was freelancing, my co-founder was freelancing, and we just said, okay, let's work together. This was one of the software projects there. So my co-founder Kai I met first. He's a software designer and also had a small agency running, and I was a software developer at the time. So it made sense to work together and was really fun. And we always had crazy ideas that we tried out, and hackathons that we did on the weekend. That was quite fun. So we immediately felt that fit, and it was just fun to work together. And then actually, I think only a few months later, we went to another kind of networking event in Munich, and we both independently of each other met Hartmut, our third co-founder, who's essentially the suits and tie of Userlane, the business guy. And we also just felt that immediate fit. And then I remember still, we were all in Kai's apartment back then, and we're just going through crazy thought experiments, like what would happen if everything human made would disappear from one moment to the other, and then we're all just again naked folks in the woods again, and then how would we survive? How would we rebuild society if we could? And this was just one of the many things that we brainstormed through, essentially, just because it was fun for us. And then we said, hey, our way of thinking aligns. Let's build something together. And this is also maybe why we had just this, I think, phase of creativity where we were also a bit looking for ideas. And then, of course, when a customer asks you, like, hey, can you please come over, do a really dull job for us? Then you kind of this is then the moment where you can say, okay, let's do this in a smarter way, and then probably this might be valuable, and then you try to prove the idea. And it was really nice dynamic because Kai and me were just crushing it. We were just building the software, building the prototype in a few weeks, and Hartmut was out there collecting feedback from customers in the early days and giving them a demo on the prototype. So if you click somewhere wrong, you need to really make sure that everything goes well there. And it was really exciting. And now we are here. Yeah, a few years later, it has come quite an operation now with 60 people here, the various teams. It's also been a really incredible journey for us. And what I'm really most thankful for is that we all focus on culture a lot when we built the company. It was always clear for us that the kind of company that we want to build is where also working on the projects is really fun. Where also we want. I have always this goal of building the best employer of the world. This is of course completely impossible and completely over the top, but I think it's not that difficult. On the other hand, it's always surprised me how many companies are out there, forcing their employees through really bad processes that are not meant to keep people productive, but rather to control them. That's a really bad pattern, and it's just so prominent everywhere. And we always wanted to do this better. And when I look at the feedback that I got from many of the new hires, they say, "Hey, wow, your hiring process is so smooth." And when I met the team, everyone's so excited and energetic. And yes, it's because of this. Because to work together, you need to enjoy coming to work, and you need to enjoy meeting your colleagues. And as long as the team is built like that, it will always be fun for everyone, and it's more likely that people put in a tremendous amount of energy in order to make this company and the projects that you're working on a success, because they essentially don't work for the company, but they work for themselves. And this has been an inspiration that I always wanted to fulfill. And I hope I managed to do this with Userlane.
Well, it seems to be working. I think when a founder or a founding team comes from the angle that, they work for their employees, they have to create an environment that attracts talent, retains it as well, because especially over the last few years, I've worked with tech companies throughout Europe, and I speak to obviously software engineers all the time, and I've heard some real shocking horror stories of people turning up on their first day and they didn't even have a desk, or they were hired as a software engineer but they actually were a support engineer, and they've flown all the way over from, I don't know, Brazil or wherever, on a salary that's way below market rate because they didn't know the salaries at the time. It's been the tech industry has been such a hotbed for innovation, and some great companies have been built, but there's such a big human cost, especially to the ones of hyper growth. I don't know if it's something, as you look to grow next year, how are you going to maintain that culture? And it's a struggle that all businesses have.
Yes, exactly. And this is the first important step is to be aware of this and to make your team aware of this. So when we were preparing for the funding round, and we were 40 people, 45 at the time, and we knew that the funding round is gonna boost us all the way to 80, 85. We knew that culture is going to change. And we prepared our team for it. We told them about it. We told, hey, It's not the question if culture will change. It's the question what it will change towards. And
yes,
there is the saying, the only constant on earth is change. So basically, it means take an opportunity to shape the culture, to make it even better, to shape it towards something that you would like to see, and not hold on to the way it used to be. So I even remember when we were only 20 people, the connection was incredible. We were really like a family. And also just because, in the early startup days, we were even cooking together a lot and also having dinner together in the office a lot. It felt a bit like a frat house where we were together, like just having lots of fun also. And we're still having fun, but it's a different kind of fun in a way. And everything is getting more professional, but that doesn't have to be something bad. And there's also this idea of, hey, we're growing to be an enterprise by ourselves, and we needed to be a good enterprise. And many people look at role models like Google and many of the other grown-up startups that have managed a good culture, even when they grow to 10,000s of people. And so it is possible. And one guiding principle along the way that helped us is the idea of minimum viable processes, MVPs. And the idea here is that you don't want to have huge processes that control what people should be doing when this and that happens, because you can't foresee all of that anyway. And then it all depends just on this one central person, who just decides of how things should be. That's not how it should be. So a minimum viable process allows for flexibility of the people who go through these processes to be human, to just take smart decisions if they or to also listen to gut feeling to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And to just take the right decision and to be empowered to do that, and to have also a culture of failure where you're avoiding blame and these kind of things. And this is I see many founders talk about processes and building processes, and this is really the most important thing. And sometimes also processes can be over-engineered, and that needs to be avoided. Because if there is a really raw process that tells people don't deviate from it, you're basically becoming a machine. You're becoming a cog in a huge machine. And that, of course, I think works, but it's not inspiring. That's not really what people want to do, what humans want to do. Humans want to combine maybe a rule set, some kind of environment, some kind of guidelines with their own creativity and with their own feeling of what is right and wrong. And this is essentially what humans are really good at, to just know and feel what is right and wrong. And you need to allow your team to do that. And then I think you're set for a really good culture, because then people will feel people will feel their work as a meaningful thing, even when you have hundreds of people. And one of the biggest changes that we're also preparing for right now is that not everyone's going to know each other all the time. Yeah. So I think we're just at this moment right now, around 60 people now, where it starts to get a bit confusing with all the new names and hiring 5 people every month. And that is just quite some pace. And I think this also, when you're conscious about it and when you prepare your team for it, like, hey, this is maybe not going to be the case, but then you also take some measures. Like we have this matching bot that just connects 2 people every week, 2 random people from the company, and just invites them for a virtual coffee session. So they just get to know each other. They get to talk about random stuff, not necessarily work. And that, I think, is a really powerful measure to keep people connected. And also the way you implement OKR in your company can have a huge impact on this. And because the OKR essentially is the thing that links everyone's work to the bigger picture and to the goals of the company, of your team also. And this, if you do OKR right, it provides meaning. It explains why the work is necessary and how it helps the society that you're in, the environment that you're in. And this is ultimately what humans want. They want meaningful work, and it's really important that you provide that, essentially.
So do you think, as a concept I've never really heard, because I've worked with a lot of startups growing, and they've always wanted to hold on to that startup culture. So do you think in doing that, they're putting in these processes that are actually taking away the autonomy of their employees, and they need to reframe the problem, and that's what Userlane is doing?
Yeah, you mentioned something very, very right here. The autonomy is something very essential together with mastery. And I feel that autonomy and mastery are the 2 things that everyone wants. Some people are conscious about it and they express that. Other people aren't, but I think it's deeply hardwired into every human. You want to master something, master a skill, might be software engineering or marketing, communication, or selling. You want to get better at that. So you also want to give your team members a growth path and give them encouraging feedback and areas for development. And not everything has to be positive. That's not the point here. But the point is in particular that when things are not done right, that you give that feedback and that you allow for growth and that you foster growth and really make that happen in the company by getting trainers, getting tutors, assigning like a buddy who is more experienced, or working with some mentors in some form. That is really, really valuable, so that you build this mastery in your team. And the other thing then is autonomy. And this goes more with what I've said before about the minimum viable process, that you don't want to lock people into processes. Processes should enable people to think faster and not lock them. and prevent them from taking autonomous decisions. So think about also like the symphony orchestra. When they are playing their music, they have these sheets in front of them with how the music should be played, but they still study hard months ahead of a concert, and they have the notes in front of them, not because they need them, but because it reassures them that in case they forgot or in case they don't know, they can look at it. But still, they are autonomous to feel the situation and to take to put a human touch into music. And the same thing is also with any kind of process. So there is software development guidelines for software engineers, and there is probably a call script for salespeople. But still, you don't want just people to stick to it. People need to put their own human touch in it, and this, I think, is overlooked, and this should be considered, in my opinion, and because this then allows for autonomy and mastery. And I think this is the ultimate equilibrium of the best work environment possible.
And then people stay, people hear about it, people are attracted to the company, and the company grows. Because there'll be a lot of people listening to this, sort of software engineers or even sort of young people who have an idea in regards to a company. So if we go back to the start again, because you were at university, right? So what was it like? I mean, you hear about these Silicon Valley stories where, the website's up in the day and you're coding at night and it's grind. I think we kind of evolved from that a bit now, but because you dropped out of university, didn't you, to pursue Userlane?
Yeah, true. I did that. Actually, the story is quite funny because, so the story is a bit longer. Let me start. Actually, when I was 15, still in high school, my computer science teacher told me, "Okay, look, dude, I've taught you everything I know, but I know this university professor. Maybe he can teach you more." And so he signed me up for uni when I was 15, still in high school, and I did that on the side. So I already had some experience with that. So then, life took a different turn. I got my first girlfriend at that age, and I went traveling the world, and then I came back and I knew, okay, when I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be a software engineer. But actually, while traveling, I was really inspired because I was working at a hotel briefly, and it was a small family-run hotel, and it has just been bought by a new owner, and this new manager was there and enjoying his work so much. And this is something that I haven't seen in any other person before, how much he was enjoying it and how much he was living for it. And this really inspired me. And he was essentially a real entrepreneur who just looked to make things possible, to make things happen. He renovated the hotel. He got just the right team to do that. And he had some creativity, and that was really inspiring. And then I said, okay, maybe I can combine some of this. So then later I went to uni, formally studied computer science and game engineering. Game engineering was also really fun. And luckily my university, the Technical University of Munich, they have some really good entrepreneurship programs. So I went through all of them. I sucked up this spirit and the knowledge there, and it was really, really valuable. And I was then, since I knew some of the computer science programs already, I was just freelancing on the side. And then this is how I got to know my co-founders. And then things escalated a bit. And then I just decided to quit university in favor of the business, because university doesn't run away and the business opportunity might. So I still don't know to the day if the Technical University of Munich would consider me a good example case of how well their entrepreneurship programs worked, or a bad case because I'm a dropout. Let's see.
I'm sure they'll have you on their website with their Munich success story. So when was that realization? Because you're kind of quite flippant about it and very casual. I just dropped out of university and that was that.
Well, it was gradual, So I was working freelance on the side. So that is very flexible, because at times, if you have just this exam period for a month, then you don't work, right? Then you just focus on your exams, yes. But then, the other 5 months of the semester is like, attending courses, maybe not even attending courses. I think nowadays you don't even go to uni. There's recordings anyway. Then also you don't. So you take essentially just the university as your environment, as this safe harbor I would say, where you fall back to. But actually, as a student, also you get invited to lots of technology events. You can just go there. You often get tickets for free or something, or you go to the university's entrepreneurship program, and they connect you with just what's going on. So it's a very exploratory phase, and it doesn't happen from one day to the other that you decide, okay, now I'm going to drop this, but rather gradually I was working more and more hours for the freelance, less focusing on uni. And actually it was even at the last semester that I took, I was working full time, essentially freelance. And then only new exams were coming up in February. So I took just 1st of February until 29th of February, I took off to only work on the exams. But before that, I didn't even look at the course material. So not that I recommend this behavior, but it worked. And actually the irony is then I passed all these exams, and then early March I decided to drop out. So I essentially wasted a month in a way. Or was it really wasted? It was also a nice experience to go through all of this. And it's just nice to go through uni and also to learn something about the background of computer science. And actually the game engineering program at TU München is really amazing, because you work on a real project. Like, you're gonna build a video game every semester from semester one. And it's really nice, because it's a bit more practical than computer science, but still you get to see all the theories behind computer science, which are very mathematical. So I think it was a nice mix for me.
Okay. So after you drop out and you're pursuing Userlane and you're in that crazy startup phase, was there ever a moment where you were like, what on earth have I done? Did you ever look back and think, oh God?
Daily. No, but I think it has a lot of it has a lot to do with just what your environment and your friends and your family have to say about this. So I think it's completely natural that you kind of listen to their opinion, and that their opinion matters to you. Of course, this all should be taken with a grain of salt, and there is, of course, huge teachings on just, hey, like, only focus on yourself, no matter what friends and family say. But I mean, there is a little bit of truth in both perspectives. So anyway, for me, I think the only thing that I was worried about is that I wouldn't get the approval from my parents. Not that I needed their approval, but I think it's still, you want kind of to be appreciated, and that your parents say, hey, nice. And I mean, in the first year or so, when you basically are still dropping out of uni, not getting a salary yet, that's kind of a tough year. But then after that, when you got seed funding, at least getting a basic salary, then I think it was like everyone was really impressed. And that, of course, since then, everyone was really supportive. So I guess it's just making this gap year between, okay, you're already focusing full time on your idea, on your startup there, but you don't have seed funding yet, or you don't have enough revenue yet to pay yourself a salary. I think this is really tough. And this, when you just go through this after that, again, if you're earning a salary, they're really proud, and that's fine. And actually, the thing is, my grandpa was always dreaming about me going to uni, because I was, I think, the first one in my family who actually went to uni for my grandpa. And he was really sad when he heard about it, because he didn't understand what I was doing. So my grandpa has no computer, no smartphone. He's like completely unaware of, like, he knows that there is the internet, and he hears it everywhere, that now radio ads and even newspaper ads, they mention just go to this site to learn more. And he's like, yeah, maybe I should get that to learn more about things, because he was a really curious person in a way, but not on that internet thing. And so I was trying to explain to him what the idea is of Userlane and what I'm doing there. And I think I couldn't really explain it to him, because he didn't even know software or anything. So then saying that we are making software training better and enabling people to be more productive, was really, really abstract. So I think this was a bit difficult there, because he also, of course, from a very conservative mindset, you would think like, hey, you need to finish your university, otherwise who's going to hire you? And it's just nowadays in 2020 and so on, it's not like that anymore, or not really like
cool
that
now.
anymore. Yeah, kind of.
Sexy.
But yeah, but of course, I mean, the picture of entrepreneurship is sexy,
Yeah.
but when you really go through it, of course, you have doubts, and of course, you think, hey, shouldn't I have finished my degree? But I think, as I said before, if you have this serious opportunity, or if you feel that this is the right thing to do, then do it, because university doesn't run away. I mean, it's also easier here in Munich or in Germany, where university is nearly free, and the more of what you focus on is just like, how do you finance your lifestyle or your apartment there, but at least you are not in debt because you go to uni, at least that. And of course, I think the pressure is just massively higher if you're living in a country where you have to pay a lot for university or even have to get into debt. Of course, that then is quite a difference, and it just takes even more conviction then, but I guess it will happen anyway if you feel that's the right thing. And that's, again, it's connected also to how I want to build the company culture at Userlane, is that if you feel it's the right thing to do, then, and if you have reasons for it, and if you honestly believe it as a human, then it would be a very weird process to tell you not to do it. And you need to you don't just need to follow the rule book because it's the rule book, but also the rule book needs to explain itself and say why you're doing certain things. And this is part of it. So if a rule book of life would say, hey, you have to go to uni to get your degree, and then what? Yeah, just to get hired at this company. And yeah, but then I can also just make my own company. So then I'm just there already. And especially now in this modern age, it's not like you go to, like, a human now, we live for, let's say, 100 years. So that, let's say, the first 20, maybe 30 of these years are education. And then after that, you work a little bit and then you retire. I think this model works now, but I think it's already shaking. And it's, I think, at the brink of breaking down, because things and the world are changing too quickly in order to support that. So you need to have this constant attitude of learning and relearning things, and maybe also unlearning things in your life. So it's not that you go to uni once and this will then determine the rest of your life, but rather more and more people are going to have a career switch, are going to have a different field that they discover when they are in their 30s or 40s. And I think with that mindset in mind, university doesn't run away. I can also go to uni in my 30s if I really need to. And I think we should just focus on, really abolishing these university fees. I think that would really help a lot, and making education more accessible and more free. And I think then this would get us closer to an idealistic society, or the ideal picture of society that we should converge towards.
Yeah, I went to university in England, and it's I've got so much student loans to pay off. It actually makes me sad even thinking about it. But yeah, we definitely free education and unlocking it. But you make an interesting point about the way the world is working now, because you can literally set up a business from your phone. You could sell something on Instagram, or build up a brand on LinkedIn. And the power of the internet and what is out there right now, and I honestly believe you could learn how to run a business just by watching YouTube videos and tutorials and things like that. There's so much out there, and so much stuff can be done for free or at such a low cost. And that's only going to become more accessible, and that is 100% where the world is going. And with, potentially education becoming remote and universities becoming remote as well, what are we paying for in say England or the US?
Yeah, I think that ultimately the world, how it's going to move forward and how it's going to look like in 2050 or 2100. I stopped saying 2050 because it's crazy if you think about it, that 2000 is 20 years away. And we are now equally close to 2040 than we are to 2000. It's mind blowing, because we usually don't think about time frames like this, but then the future is happening now already, like 2020, and then 2030, when we want to have been on Mars and everything, is just 10 years from now. And do you remember how soon ago 2010 was? So yeah, I think humans normally underestimate how quickly the future is going to come. So I think, yes, we are going to live ever longer. I think also industries and career paths will change ever faster. So I think the concept of having one career in your life doesn't apply anymore. Likely you'll need to have multiple career paths, and you need to go to university again, and university programs might need to be shortened a bit. And I already see this, and software engineering is one of those fields where people are now questioning if you should go through university for that. And there is lots of code universities who do offer a program in only a year or two and just focus, on the practical stuff, less on the theory behind it, which I think is a double-edged sword. You have to think about it, because I think it's really valuable if you deeply understand the theory, but then, jumping maybe from software engineering to something like a support engineer to a sales engineer, maybe customer success, think about it. It's a whole new field that came up recently, or, recently in the last 15 years or so. Before that, it didn't exist, or it was just branded differently. So I think there will ever be more and more opportunities to apply yourself and to apply your knowledge and your humanity, but you can't just say that it will stay the same for all the 40, maybe 50 years of your career that you're going through.
Is there a difference between, I'm not a coder by any stretch of the imagination, but if someone studies software engineering at university, or there's someone who does a boot camp, is there much difference in their ability? Because a lot of people say to me, it's more about what you do on the side and the passion.
So, some things have to be set straight. So, for example, in typical computer science university, you don't really learn how to program. So the code that is written in universities is vastly different from code that is written in companies, no matter if big or small. And this is, I think, the main thing that people have been saying, like, if you go to computer science uni and want to be a software engineer afterwards in a commercial company, well, then you should probably do things on the side and get real world experience there. And so there is this aspect, but still what you learn in computer science uni is still relevant to what you're doing, especially when you think about performance of algorithms. If you think about the bigger picture of architecture a lot, it's also just a nice experience to go through uni and to discover all the different aspects of it. So it's still a very proper way to go through computer science uni, but don't expect that to be the entire thing. You still need to do things on the side. And then, of course, there's code universities, which definitely get you up to speed in a relatively short amount of time. And likely in the current economic situation, you'll even find a job, and you're going to do good stuff there. But if you want to become a software architect, or if you want to, I think, really attain a really high position, I would still be a bit wary. But what am I saying? I think even in our team, we have some examples that prove different, that prove the difference, that it's, every exception proves the rule. So we also have some engineers in our team who didn't complete their university program. I didn't complete my university program, and of course can still be software architects and managers and everything like that. And still, I think it's valuable to learn programming or to learn technology. And I think it's even something that Steve Jobs has said. I hope I don't don't misquote him, but I think he said, learning to code is important not because you need to code, but because it teaches you a way of thinking. And it's this kind of thing that computers and technology, it's amazing that it works. When you think about it, it's just billions of transistors, and then just things happen nowadays. And it's how does Wi-Fi work? How does all of the world literally work? It's amazing that electricity even exists. And so it's just this way of dealing with this technology that humans have created is, I think, a good way of thinking that you want to have exposure to. And this, I think, why I think it's a good thing that there is code programs, and that, of course, you bring in, even if you have a different background. So even if you studied arts and have worked in museums and have worked on a completely different thing, and then switch to software engineering, I think that's really valuable, because software engineering is essentially a creative task if you're coming up with systems. And of course, there is also the craft of software engineering, where you just need to get a certain product delivered, and where you can just study of this is how it should be done, and this is the absolute best way to do this, and the absolute simplest way, and just do it that way. But I think these are two different aspects of it that you need to combine in a business. So You need to have some creativity when you think about how things should be working. How are you going to apply some of the existing patterns and materials of software engineering into the software? But then building it all out is essentially a craftsmanship, and this can be treated differently. So I think, to sum it up, the diversity matters, and this is why all different backgrounds are welcome in software engineering.
One thing I've massively seen from, obviously, people have been laid off this year. There's been a massive rise in people retraining into software engineering, the rise of boot camps, and I know there's been huge debate on how useful they are, but I think it stems down from that passion and the stuff you do outside of everything. One thing we haven't covered, and I know a lot of people, especially sort of early stage founders, would find interesting, so we'll wrap up soon. So when you drop out of university and the founding team's assembled and you're on no salary, you're obviously, were you working towards that seed funding round? And how did that first round come about, and what was the journey like leading towards it?
Yeah, very, very true. So yes, we, like in our model that my co-founders and me agreed on, that we want to get venture funding early, and this whole way of doing things, we were definitely working towards the seed funding. And I think every funding round we went through always took roughly 6 months. So that's at least the thing. And then you only start to start the funding round if you have at least some customers, or if you have some revenue at least, and definitely some kind of MVP product in the hands of the customers, so more than just the prototype. And so this is why I think you need at least a year, if maybe 1.5 or 2 years. It really depends on
from starting the actual business.
From starting the actual business until you be able to pay yourself a salary. If you go down the VC path, there is also the other way of doing things, where you don't collect venture funding early on, where you just bootstrap yourself, and where it really depends on your business model, and you need to make cash early on, significant cash, and in order to pay for yourself and probably pay for also some of the employees that you're going to hire or contractors that you're going to work with. And this is, I think, then even a harder way, but it also it also gives you a different ownership of your own business and a different kind of perspective on it. So I think so we were working towards the seed funding, and you kind of know a few months ahead of it that it's likely going to happen. And when you have a term sheet, and then you just go through due diligence. Essentially, due diligence in the early days is really simple, because there is not much history of the company or history or legacy code to look at. So yeah. I think it was a one day exercise for our seed funding, and that's that, right? And then seed funding, you really have this timing, the team, a bit of the vision. Then you just show early proof that you actually can put the vision into practice. That's all what seed funding is about. And even the specific target group or business model or something, you should have ideas about all of these things and hypotheses. But I think everyone's in the industry should be aware that these can change. Yeah. And I mean, they did for us as well. In the beginning, we sold to other SaaS businesses, and now we're selling to enterprises, and the use case and also a bit of the product features and functionalities are different. But I think that's a reasonable, I don't even think that it qualifies as a pivot. It's essentially just moving up market, moving into a different field, but the same product still. And after that, there is certain tips and tricks of just what you should do. And I mean, I think essentially you want to define your own success. So there is not a single measurement of how successful you are, but success basically means you set yourself a goal, and then how good are you at attaining those goals, at meeting those goals. And this is what success is. And I think I'm indirectly quoting Warren Buffett here. So there is not a single measure of this is how to do it, but it's also an expression. The company that you're building is also an expression of who you are and how you want things to be. So take that in mind if you're thinking about starting your own business, that you can design it, you can make it the way you want. And then if you just define your own success, and you're quite free to do anything. And I think the economic success will follow that. But you kind of only to a limited degree pursue that directly. You're kind of just working on your things, building the world in the way that you want it, and then economic success and other kinds of success will just follow up on that. Yeah. It's like with happiness. You can't directly try to be happy. That can only come as a side effect of you living the way that you want to live it.
And do investors, when they're looking at you, do you think they take all that into consideration? They're looking at the founding team, they're looking at almost their philosophy as well as the product, as well as the kind of money. Are you going to investors, or are they coming to you and they're taking a good look at just more than the numbers?
That depends on the investor and depends on how the investor defines their success as well. If they want to support businesses that have a certain perspective on the world, or if they want to just have the maximum return, so hopefully these things connect. Hopefully you can have economic success just because you have such a strong idea of what you want to do with the world. And so there is not a single answer, yes or no. It depends on the investor.
How did you find your investor? Was that just from networking or pitching?
Yeah, networking, pitching, just trying everything. I think in the seed round, there is lots of, just pitch events. You can always just get in touch with investors directly as well. There is also often, I think the specific way that we found our investors, but we tried everything that was available to us. But what did the magic trick for us was we were pitching at, I think the organization is called Buy Startup. It's just a regional organization that's trying to help startups in Bavaria, so in the specific state that we founded, to get connected to investors. So they are basically this pool of here's the investors, here's the startups, and they have, I think, monthly pitching events where then a handful of startups present to investors. And I think this is the specific event where we met our seed investors, but we have tried everything. This was just one of the many methods, and maybe it was just coincidence that this method worked out. But I think, also investors are actively looking for startups. So it's pretty much like a dating scene in a way.
Yeah.
Both sides are need to be up for it. And I think investors are equally also trying to sift through startups and trying to find just the right one for them.
There must be an app out there where you swipe through investors and startup ideas. There must
likely.
be.
Likely there is.
Or if not, someone can steal that idea from me. So we'll wrap up soon. If I'm a software engineer, or I'm at university, or I'm not even in tech, but I'm looking to start my own business and I've got an idea, what sort of couple of bits of advice would you give to someone right now in that particular headspace who's not sure whether to do it or how to go about it?
Get feedback. What you do not want to do is you don't want to waste 2 years of your life on an idea that's not even interesting to people. So you need to build some kind of prototype on the side, a really minimal thing. It only needs to have one functionality, one feature. And then you just ask people for feedback and would you like to use it? And ideally, you prove that even by generating some revenue with that, even if it's really small. So I think we had like 1,000 of monthly recurring revenue when we get our seed funding. So this is like symbolic revenue. It doesn't really mean anything, but it means that,
must have felt good though.
Yes, definitely. I still remember how we won one of our first clients, when all 3 founders went there to pitch them for a deal of €200 a month, and it's not something that would scale ever, but it's still something typical early stage startup things.
Yeah,
and I would recommend anyone to do this. You can do this. You can probably build your prototype somehow on the side. And for example, so the Userlane product, you have these interactive tours, and there is this playback of an interactive tour where it renders on the screen and it shows users where to click. And then there is the editing side, how you create those tours. Both parts are equally important. Actually, the editing side even is a bit more important, because if the content is easier to create, there's going to be more interactive tours. The whole ecosystem is going to be more valuable to users. But we did not have this editor at all. We only had the player side, which is, I would say, twice as easy to build. or has like half the cost of building. And only that was the prototype that we did. And even that was later the product that we went to customers with. And we told them, okay, it's a SaaS model. There's going to be an editor in the future. But for now, you just get guide building service for free. So we're going to have internal people that are going to build the guides the way you want them, but we don't going to publish the editor until half a year from now or so. And they agreed to that. Was for them a nice way of getting like free UX consulting on their onboarding experience, and for us to already have some customers, even though the product is not finished. And I guess this typical like looking for the low-hanging fruits, looking for a way to make revenue even when the product is not yet finalized. This, I think, is essential that you do something like this, because otherwise it would have taken a year, and it would have taken a 5-person engineering team a year to build that fully fledged product, and that would have been quite an investment. And then maybe you figure out later that it's not even needed, or that there is no product market fit, or that there is you're not even close to a product market fit. Then this is sad, and you don't want to do that. So you want to get feedback very, very early on with a prototype, maybe even build the prototype just in PowerPoint with slides just to visualize and fake it. There is now dozens of tools in the early days that you can just visualize your prototype, whoever. There is many tools there that you can use and do that and talk to customers, and don't be afraid to get out there. And this was actually one of the main things of the entrepreneurship course in TU München, where literally the tutor was shouting at us, get out of the building. You need to talk to your users, to your customers. You cannot create a business just on a whiteboard. That doesn't work. You need to get out of the building. You need to move your asses. And that is really the advice that I'm sharing here is you need to get out of the building. You need to get in direct touch with your users and look them in the eye and see if they are really excited, or if they're just saying, yeah, that's cool because I feel too awkward to say it's bad in front of you. So you need to also get a feeling for this. And of course, many people say, that's really interesting, but that doesn't mean anything. You need to really ask for some kind of commitment. And this is why showing even a little revenue, even if it's only 1,000 euros a month, is already something, because this means that people are willing to pay for it and don't just say, yeah, that's a cool idea if I get it for free, because that's not a commitment. And so this is like the first kind of cycle of value generation that you have to prove there. And if you're doing that, then you are on the right track.
Amazing. Yeah, they do say as well, never go to your friends and family for feedback, because they'll just tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't have to go to them for feedback, but still, like, you need to have someone committing to it. If your friends and family are also fine there, but you want to go to the market in some kind of way.
Yeah. Amazing. So we'll wrap up there. If people want to get in touch with you, just founder advice, or for whatever reason, would it be LinkedIn the best way to just drop you a request?
Sure, go ahead. Connect me on LinkedIn, add me there. I try to go through my messages on LinkedIn. I must admit there is quite a lot of spam there. I hope they get that under control someday. But generally, I also that's also the way we met, Alex. So you also approached me on LinkedIn, so that worked. Now I'm here, and so if anyone wants more advice, I'm open to it.
And if someone wants to use Userlane's software or is interested in hearing more, what's the best way?
I guess you go to our website and get in touch via the website. I think that's the best straightforward way to get a demo of the product and to get someone on the phone who will make sure that it aligns. And similarly, if you're also in software engineering, in marketing and product design and sales, and I think almost any kind of trade, then you can also look at the jobs page and the career page at Userlane. We also have a nice portfolio there of the existing team, and if you want to work with people who are fun to work with, then the team is really important. So also there's team interviews that in every kind of in the hiring process, and they're really also there to give you a feeling of who you'd be working with, and take also that as an opportunity to get to know your colleagues already. That's one more tip I would like to give.
Excellent. Well, I've been following Userlane for a while, and they've been on quite a journey this year, and the growth plans you have seem really exciting, and it was great to hear the story of how it all started, and it's amazing how sometimes things just fit. So thanks so much for your time, Felix. I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value from it.
Thank you, Alex. I enjoyed talking to you a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to the Building Our World podcast. To show your support and to stay up to date, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.